but I was sitting there and I was saying, God, this is what I always wanted. And there was two responses I remember really feeling the Lord speaking to me. He said two things to me. In this video, I'm going to give you 7 things that can change your life by understanding the book of Ecclesiastes. If there was one book that would define the life that we live today, it would be this one that we're going to talk about. Life can be draining. Life can be frustrating. Life can be depressing. Life can be anxious. Life can be hopeless. And what's really interesting about life is sometimes someone sharing their deepest, darkest pains and hurts gives us life. We've all seen those videos. We'll watch something online and it'll be maybe a situation of someone being in a third world country. And just for a moment when you see them not even having basic necessities, you look at your life and say, well, maybe my life isn't that bad. Or maybe I'm focusing on the wrong things. Or maybe there's something more to life than what I believe today. And if I had to point to one book of the Bible that has changed my perspective on life and revealed to me what I was experiencing, it's the book of Ecclesiastes. What's up, everybody? It's your pastor friend, David Narvaez, and this channel exists to help you build your life on Jesus in spirit and truth so you can live out your heavenly calling. And if I were to survey the Bible, there's 66 books. Ecclesiastes is one of the most overlooked books in the Bible. It's not really popular. People view it as super depressing, but there are some insights that I've taken from this book that really began to transform my life. And to give a little bit of a backstory, I got saved when I was 10 years old, had a rough childhood. I moved out of my household when I was 16, got baptized at 18. And 18 years old, well, that was the first time I felt called into ministry. And that was the first time I had ever heard of this book called Ecclesiastes. I wasn't reading the Bible, had no scriptural knowledge. I really had no idea of anything about scripture. I knew there was Jesus, I knew he saved us, and that was about it. And there was a sermon that was almost doing an overview of the book of Ecclesiastes. And he was just going chapter by chapter explaining all of the nuances, all of the experience of this man named Solomon. But first, we need to recognize a little backstory, and that first statement is this. The book was written by King Solomon. Solomon was King David's son. He was the son that was supposed to carry the torch and continue on in expanding the kingdom of Israel all throughout the Mesopotamian area and continue to glorify God. He was chosen to build the temple because David was prohibited from building the temple. But as we know about King Solomon, he fell into sin. He fell into idolatry. He fell into promiscuity. He fell into pridefulness. He fell into a lot of things that ended up causing the kingdom to fall. And what ended up happening is the kingdom of Israel ended up splitting into the northern and the southern kingdom. And that's where many of the prophetic books are written during that time frame. And it's a time frame of theological idolatry and apostasy, as you would call it. So that's the background. And to understand King Solomon, he was someone, and this is what stuck out to me when I heard this sermon. King Solomon was the person you wish you could be. Anything you want in this life, King Solomon had it. If you wanted money, he was the richest at the time. If you wanted wisdom, he was the smartest at the time. If you wanted ladies, my boy had I think it was 300 wives and was it 500 or 800 concubines? I'm not sure the exact number. It was too many, okay? It was too many. Anything and everything you desire on this earth, King Solomon had. And when I was 18 years old, listening to this sermon, listening to this message, I remembered my vision for my life. I remembered all these ideas that I had and the desires that I had and the things that I wanted to accomplish. And what the pastor was saying is that King Solomon had everything. And so here I am thinking, okay, well, if this man lived the life that I want to live, I want to take advice from him, right? I want to hear what advice he has to say in this almost obituary, essentially. This is towards the end of King Solomon's life. He's explaining to you all the most important things, kind of like Jesus's commissions before he ascends into heaven. He gives the disciples the most important things and commands they're supposed to accomplish and do. And this is King Solomon giving us the insights of his life on this earth, having achieved everything we wish we could desire. And there are 7 things that I want to show you that I promise you, if you would understand, your life would begin to change. And it starts with this. Number one, everything is empty. In Ecclesiastes 1:2-3, it says absolute futility or vapor or vanity. Other translations translate this word differently. Absolute futility, says the teacher. Absolute futility. Everything is futile. What does a person gain for all his efforts that he labors at under the sun? And so you have to imagine at the end of your life, why did it matter? Like when you get to the end of your life, at the end of the day, especially if you're someone who doesn't really believe in God or doesn't follow Jesus, your belief system is it's just going to end. And at the end of the day, whatever you have done, it is futile. But what does the word futile really mean? And we need to get into the Hebrew. So what is futile? The Hebrew word is hebel. It literally means breath or weightless. Just as you breathe right now, your breath is weightless. You can't hold it. You can't carry it. You can't bring it with you. It's something that slips through your fingers. When I breathe into my hand, that's a little bit weird, but when I just did that, the breath was just going through my hands. And so it literally means breath or weightless, and it's defined as the means to evaluate. This is how the word is used in the Old Testament. The means to evaluate the importance of personal actions based on whether they are true or false, or recognizing the pointless emptiness of evil. And so what we are seeing here is a recognition of what he is talking about, that it's pointless, that it's empty, and that it's not true. It's pointless, it's empty, and it's not true. And what's interesting is when we live our lives, we're constantly asking the question, what do we want? What do we have to look forward to? What are we excited about? And what we focus on, that ends up being where our energy goes. That ends up being where our lives end up following. We follow what we focus on. We follow the things that we desire of either a person or idea of where we want to go. And so when we think of these things, we need to ask the question, are they futile? Are they empty? Are they false? What is Solomon's opinion on these things? And just for a moment, would you mind hitting that like button? Also, whatever you're listening to, I love having conversations with people in the comments. Leave a comment in the description. I do read them and I will reply. I love hearing other people's perspectives. And would you consider subscribing and supporting this channel as I try to spread the truth of Jesus Christ all across the globe and all across the internet? Now let's jump back into the video. So second point here is that wisdom is empty. In Ecclesiastes 1 verse 18, for with much wisdom is much sorrow. As knowledge increases, grief increases. With much wisdom is much sorrow. As knowledge increases, grief increases. I remember being 19 years old and I got sucked in kind of like the whole like self-help thing. I did the whole network marketing thing and you know, it's great. It encourages you. It makes you want to do great things and make all of this money and yada, yada, yada. And so I went to this season of life where I was reading books. I didn't have a car, and so I was riding this public trolley. I was living in San Diego, California at the time, and I was reading literally a book a week. Every single week I was reading a book. And what I was hoping to find was peace. What I was hoping to find in reading these books was an unlocking of a peace and a fulfillment that I was looking for. But it was almost like a rabbit trail. Like whenever I got a golden nugget, they would call it, hey, read the books to find the golden nugget that you would take with me, that you would take with you. It always felt empty. I never felt like it led me anywhere that would really change my life from the inside out. And I began to see it as futile. I began to see it as empty. And even when I would share these insights with people, no one else was really interested. They weren't really interested in something that, oh, that's good for you, right? Oh, cool. You know, you want me to change my habits. That's super exciting. It didn't really have the impact that I thought it would. And just to give you a little background on my story, when I got baptized at 18, for the next 6 years of my life, I essentially ran away from the Lord. I felt called into ministry at 18 years old in what I would call the cycle of Judges, of sin, judgment, repentance, and restoration. I lived that cycle for 6 years. And through that cycle, I was constantly seeking these things. I was constantly seeking these anything that would give me the peace, the fulfillment, the passion that I was looking for. And one of those things was wisdom. And just like King Solomon, he was considered the wisest of his time, where kings from other nations would come to hear his knowledge and hear his wisdom. He was the one that wrote most of the Proverbs in the book of Proverbs, a very, very wise man. But yet here he is saying, I'm the one with the wisdom, but yet the more wisdom I have, the more sorrow. The more knowledge I have, it increases my grief. And it almost reminds me of Proverbs 3:5-6, where it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will make straight your paths. That God is saying we're not supposed to lean in on our wisdom or knowledge or understanding. We're supposed to lean on him. Here's my next point. That pleasure is empty. Ecclesiastes 2:1. I said to myself, go ahead and I will test you with pleasure. So this is Solomon. He has everything that you want. And he's like, listen, I'm just going to say, I feel like maybe pleasure, maybe my sexual carnate desires, that's what's going to bring me it. So I'm going to test myself. There is nothing I'm not going to do. And here's his answer, but it turned out to be futile. That King Solomon had access to as many women as possible. Who wouldn't want to be with the king? The story of King David and his fall was him trying to seek out some fleshly desire in Bathsheba, and it ended up ruining his life. Yes, God restored him, but he was not the same after that. It was the start of King David's downfall. And so King Solomon is here saying, I'm going to test myself with everything that I want. And that's what we do. We say, you know what? I know what God says about this, but I'm going to test myself in this relationship. I know God says don't have sex before marriage, but that's just an idea. I'm going to test myself with this. I know God says I should be with only one person, but I'm going to test myself on this. I know God says that it should be male and female in a relationship. But I'm gonna test this in a different way. And what Solomon is saying is that it's all futile. Listen, in those 6 years of my life, I tried to seek that fulfillment in relationships. And can I tell you something? It's empty. It won't give you what you were looking for, and it always ends empty. And that's the same conclusion that Solomon came to. It ends up being empty. Here's my next point. Possessions are empty. Number 4, Ecclesiastes 2:11. When I considered all that I had accomplished and what I had labored to achieve, so all the things that I had done in life, I found everything to be futile in a pursuit of the wind. There was nothing to be gained under the sun. I remember I wanted to have this super fancy motorcycle. I was running this business at the time, and I was doing pretty well. And so I was like, I'm going to spend my money on nice cars, on nice motorcycles. There was a time I wasn't even making a bunch of money, making decent money, the most I had ever made. And I had 2 motorcycles and a nice Honda S2000. If you're a car guy, you know what vehicle it is. And I thought that was it, but I'll never forget this. I bought a Ducati. It was my dream motorcycle. And I remember pulling up to my job and showing everyone, and it was cool. I ain't gonna lie. Like, I showed up that first day, and everyone's like, yo, is that a Ducati? That's so cool. That's an awesome motorcycle. The next day I pulled up, my manager comes out, oh my gosh, is that a Ducati? Is that yours? Yeah, that is mine. Look at me, so cool. The third day I ended up going to the beach, and these ladies took a picture of me because they thought I was famous. And for that week of life, I felt like this is everything that I wanted. And then the next week, I remember showing up to work, and what I realized was that thing that I wanted to have, that possession, I was hoping that it would give me the fulfillment, but after a week, it was empty. It gave me a short wind of what I was seeking. The possession would bring me the joy and the pride and the feel good, and it was empty. And that's what King Solomon did. He built the most beautiful temple ever to be built. For God, by the way. It was for God. It was for a religious thing. Solomon had this massive kingdom, massive influence. But what does he say? He says, I considered all that I had accomplished and what I had labored to achieve, and I found everything to be futile in the pursuit of wind. He was pursuing something that was completely empty. There was nothing to be gained. Here's point number 5. Inheritance is empty. Ecclesiastes 2:18-19. I hated all my work that I had labored at under the sun, because I must leave it to the one who comes after me. And who knows whether he will be wise or a fool, yet he will take over all my work that I labored at skillfully under the sun. This too is futile. And the reason I said inheritance instead of work is because actually in a separate section of Ecclesiastes, Solomon actually says that work is great. He says in chapter 5, verse 18, here it is what I have seen to be good. It is appropriate to eat, drink, and experience good and all the labor one does under the sun during the few days of his life God has given him, because that is his reward. So the reward is actually labor. Part of walking in fulfillment is actually going to work, which is kind of crazy to think. And so he's not talking about work. What he's saying is, I hated all my work. Why? Because I did all of this. I accomplished all of this to leave it to the one who comes after me, and who knows whether he will be wise or fool. How many people do we know leave an inheritance or a business to their child and they run it to the ground? How many know they leave a house to their child and that house gets sold and that money is squandered? How many know that they try and give their children everything, but yet they just waste it? And so at the end of the day, yes, it's great. You want to leave something for your kids. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. But what Solomon is saying is even that is futile. And we live in a world that always talks about our legacy. We always talk about the legacy we're going to live, the things we're going to give our children. But have we asked ourselves the same question that Solomon asked himself, which is it worth it? Is it worth it? Is it actually going to be worth something? And here's my second to last point here. Ecclesiastes 5:10. The one who loves silver is never satisfied with silver, and whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with income. This too is futile. I remember I had this dream board. Like when you're big in the whole self-help thing, a dream board is a big thing. They, manifestation and speak it into existence and think it into existence and all this kind of crazy nonsense. I remember I had a dream board and I had a picture of a penthouse downtown. My dream was to have a downtown penthouse in San Diego, California. I already had it picked out. It was only like $5 million, $5.5 million at the time. And I'm sure they would wait to sell it for me. So, this was going to be my dream condo, my dream penthouse. And I'll never forget this, where there was a time where I was blessed to be able to go on a trip. And, I don't have fancy things. I don't splurge on dumb stuff, especially vacation. Like I'll spend money on an experience, but not at a hotel, because I think it's kind of a waste of money. Because the fun part is going on trips and doing certain activities. But I remember I was in Thailand, and the person that was blessing me with this trip, they had points. And if you know anything about Thailand, the cost between Thailand and the U.S. is crazy different. Like, to put it into perspective, a meal in Thailand at a restaurant, not like Chipotle, at an actual restaurant, would cost you like $4 with 2 people, tip and drinks. Crazy cheap, $4. And the U.S. are easily spending $40 to $50. This 5-star hotel was $150 for one night. 5-star hotel. You're talking like close to $1,000 for a 5-star hotel for a night in the United States of America. And I'll never forget this. It was in downtown Bangkok, and I was able to go to the top, and I was looking at all of these high-rise buildings, just kind of surveying it. And I remember sitting there, and I was talking to the Lord, and I said, God, this is what I always wanted. We know the verse, Psalm 37:4, delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. But I was sitting there and I was saying, God, this is what I always wanted. And there was 2 responses I remember really feeling the Lord speaking to me. He said 2 things to me. Thanks for the balloons, by the way. He reminded me of that verse, which is, if you seek me, I will give you your heart's desires, because I love you and because I want to bless you. How much more will your Father who is in heaven give good things to those who ask him? But then he said this second thing, and I'll never forget this. It wasn't what you thought, right? I remember thinking about all the old dreams I had, all the old desires I had. I remember that dream board from, this is probably 8 years later. And for a moment, I was able to experience what was on that dream board, and it was empty. I had thought that was the pinnacle of life, and when I had finally gotten there, I realized it too is futile. So here's my last point, and I think this is, if you understand this, I believe it's going to change your life. Jesus is everything. Ecclesiastes 12:13-14. When all has been heard, the conclusion of the matter is this: fear God and keep his commands, because this is for all humanity. For God will bring every act to judgment, including every hidden thing, whether good or evil. What I had realized of 6 years of living in disobedience before the Lord, of 6 years of trying to do it my way and not trying to do it his way, of 6 years of following my path rather than his path, chasing all of these things. And when I came to the end of that road, I came to this same conclusion. This conclusion is this: fear God and keep his commands. In order to fear God, you have to know God. And you don't truly know God until you love God and you've experienced God's love for you. When you finally meet Jesus and you see him for who he truly is, not a philosophy, not an idea, not even a religion, the person of Jesus, he will redeem you. And you're like, well, I might, Jesus can't save me. I've gone too far. I'm too far gone. But Jesus said, those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. I came not to call the righteous. I came not to call those who say, I can do this on my own. I came to call sinners. For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save the lost. And if you are lost, Jesus is saying, I've come for you. And all he says is repent and believe. All he says is acknowledge that you have fallen short of the standard of who God is, of his perfection, that you have sinned before him and broken your laws. Confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and Savior of your life and follow him for the rest of your life. That is life. That is what you are seeking for. That is what you are seeking for in wisdom. That is what you are seeking for in pleasure. That is what you are seeking for in possessions. That is what you are seeking for in inheritance. That is what you are seeking for in wealth. And that is what you are seeking for as everything. And when you found him, you found everything. I hope and pray this video has had an impact on your life. My name is David Narvaez, but the truth is, it's not about you. It's not about me. It's not about David. It's all about Jesus and how we can love and serve him. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. I'd love to see your comments. Subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Also, I am a pastor of missions and discipleship. I train and equip pastors here in the U.S. and also around the world, and I can't do that without people like you partnering with me. I have a newsletter down in the description where you can stay updated, and I also have a giving page if you want to support my ministry. It would be an incredible blessing. I love you all, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace.